Okay, thanks again for staying with us on Nigeria Decides live on independent television. We did mention a while ago that we're expecting the INEC Resident Electoral Commissioner of the state. He's been here, pretty early, just to ensure that he's really relaxed before we get into the nitty-gritty of our conversation on the show today. I'd like to thank very especially Mr. Obo Efanga. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you very much.
Okay, of course, as usual, my colleague Rosa Balaho will join me to anchor this segment of the show. Mr. Fanga, well, how's the experience been since you were posted to Edo State as the rec? How's the experience been for you, particularly with the PVC collection and all the issues that came with it? And then where are we with PVC collection?
Well, thank you very much. I assumed duties in November of last year when I started my second tenure as Resident Electoral Commissioner. I was posted here to Edo State, and I've been here since then. It's been nice coming back to Edo State for the second time. My first tenure, I started off in Edo State before I was posted to another state. So good to be back. I've enjoyed a good working relationship with the people in Edo State, my staff, and also the various publics that we work with, the media, civil society groups, the political players also, and the security agencies. We've interacted with them very well to ensure that all our tasks are accomplished. You talked about the collection of permanent voters cards. As you know, that came to an end already. One of the things we were doing, which was acknowledged across the country, was that we were giving a daily update of how many people have collected their cards, local government by local government in the state. And apart from Edo State, it's only Lagos State that did something similar. So on a daily basis, we were sharing with people what we were doing, how many people collected their cards in each local government area. And now we are counting down to the election, and we are doing all that we need to do to ensure that the election comes up successfully, that it is credible, and that the winner would emerge on the basis of valid votes cast at the election. So what we will tell members of the public is to make sure they play their own part. Those who are registered to vote and have their permanent voters card should come out on election day, go to their polling units and participate in the election.
Okay, looking at what you've just said regarding the public and of course the voters, the ratio of the PVC collected, are you impressed with the differentials?
Well, when you say impressed with the differentials, it depends on how we look at it. Now, recall that I keep saying this, that the voters registration is based on the registration that was started in 2010.
Okay.
So going into the registration of 2021, 2022, we already had a backlog of cards from 2010 registration for the 2011 election, the ones for the 2015 election, and the ones for 2019 elections that were not collected. And there are various reasons for that. It was a huge number. I think somewhere in the region of 400,000 or 500,000. But for the registrations of 2021 and 2022, I think that the last time I checked, collection would have been in the region of about 70%.
Okay.
Yeah, between 60 and 70%, I'm not very sure. So I think that that's fair enough, because as many people as came to collect their cards, and the cards were already collected, yes. We also know that in this period, there have been a lot of movements across the country, migrations also across the country and outside the country. And some of the people who ought to collect the cards may be out of the country. And also some of the people whose cards were available could be that they did transfers. They are not physically based in Edo State,
okay,
but they did their transfers. They could have done the transfers from anywhere. Even people outside the country who registered in one location and now wanted to vote in Edo State, they could have done their transfers to Edo State. And then during the window period for them to come and pick their cards, they may not have been available. So I think that going into the elections, yes, we are good to go. We have a large number of people who have their cards.
Now, looking at what you've just said again,
Yeah.
70% of the PVC is collected.
Yeah.
Now, do you think that maybe there could be some factors, this issue of awareness on the side of the electorate, increased politicking, or some school of thought of a third force emerging could be responsible for this increased participation of collection of PVC in preparation for the election proper?
Yeah, you know that with every year we improve on our system. So publicity was also high there. And depending on people's impression of how the government, the current government or governance is going across the country generally, more people would be interested in the electoral process. And like you said, we can't also ignore the fact that we now have more political parties to look at, unlike in the last few years where typically we had one or two political parties to look at. But now we have more political parties. Even though in the previous election we had as many as, I think, 91 political parties. But in the real sense of it, people could only count one or two in each election. But now that we have fewer political parties, 18, out of the 18, there are so many more than the two that people were always identifying with are out there as who have come out strongly and with candidates at different levels. So a lot more people are interested. And also to say that our electoral process has improved tremendously in the last few years, and many people have shown more interest and faith in the electoral process because of some of the technologies that we've brought in to show that every vote counts, and there is little or no room for manipulation of the results.
Before I allow Sonny ask you the other question, do you think the BVAS, because you just mentioned again, the electronic device,
Yes.
introduced by INEC to ensure credibility of the conduct of the election?
Yes.
The stakes are high. I hope you agree with me.
Sure.
The stakes are high. Now, do you think BVAS is flawless?
There is no technology that is flawless anywhere in the world. I mean, even when you're talking about spacecraft, they do all the things, spend so much, and you still see crashes. There's no technology that is foolproof. But what we are saying is that where we are today, the BVAS is a useful technology and very effective for the election that we are conducting.
Okay.
Now, what does the BVAS do? The BVAS helps in accreditation of voters,
Okay.
and records how many people have been successfully accredited. So when you now count the votes, you cannot add votes. You see, what was happening before now was that you have an election, the votes are cast. If you have a polling unit that has, say, 500 registered voters,
Yeah.
and on election day, 120 people come out and are accredited and vote. At the end of the day, the people around the political parties gang up with the community leaders, and they say, look, we can't be said to have only 120 persons voted in this election, so the remainder of the votes, they decide to share it in some ratio that the leading party would still lead, and then they go home and claim that there was a 90% turnout at the election, even when we know it wasn't like that. But with the BVAS, you can't do that.
Okay.
The actual results, figures counted is what will reflect, because you cannot have more votes than the BVAS has accredited.
Okay. Talk to us about a typical election day operation with the BVAS,
Okay.
against the background that is also part of our strategy to educate and enlighten the electorates out there on what to expect on election day.
Okay, thank you. So on election day, the polls will open at 8:30 a.m. At that time, Registered voters will go to the polling unit. So when you go to your polling unit with your permanent voter's card, you cannot vote without your permanent voter's card. I need to stress that. So you go with a permanent voter's card, the electoral officials would be there, they will announce to people before it starts.
Okay.
They'll show that the BVAS is recording 0.
Okay.
Accreditation, they'll show you that they have the ballot box, which is empty, they have the ballot papers, and they have the result sheets. There'll be agents of the political parties that are contesting in that election, in that polling unit. And then, of course, there'll be security operatives and observers and all that. Now, when they want to start, so the person that has come to vote, we also display the list of voters in that polling unit. So you check and confirm that you're meant to vote in that polling unit. And then you proceed to present yourself to the presiding officer, and the person checks your card. That is a card issued by INEC, is a permanent voter's card, and they check your voter's identification number, impute it into the BVAS. Your details will come up, and we want to certify that the person who has come with this card is actually the owner of that identity. The way to certify is through the person's fingerprints. Most people have 10 fingers. So at the time of registration, we took the fingerprints of all your 10 fingers. And we also took your photo. So you put your finger, any of the fingers should be able to accredit you. If it takes checking all the 10 fingers until one works, then you are good to go. In the event that doesn't go through, then we'll take your picture. Your facials, at least, either your fingerprints or your facials must match the one in the system. And once that matches, you are given the ballot paper. Now, in the first election of 25th, there will be 3 elections there. People will vote for the president, they'll vote for the senator, and they'll vote for the House of Reps member they want to represent them. So you will be given those 3 ballot papers. The ballot papers will be different in terms of colors and design. And so, for instance, in the presidential election, there are 18 political parties that have all of them have candidates. So the ballot paper for the presidential election will have space for 18 parties. The one for Senate, it depends on the Senate seat. Some may have just 4, some may have up to 10, it depends. You have that one. Then the House of Reps too, depending on how many people are contesting in your constituency. And you'll also be shown the ballot boxes that are also color-coded and explain to you, and the name would be written there: presidential, Senate, House of Reps. So you are given these 3 ballot papers, you are shown to a cubicle. The cubicle is designed in such a way that it guarantees secrecy of your voting. Because our election is open secret balloting, the secrecy is how you have voted. So you will be given the ballot. When you finish voting, you fold the ballot and then bring it and put it in the appropriate box. At the end of the election will continue. It will start at 8:30. It will close at 2:30 p.m. But at 2:30 p.m., if there's anybody who is on the line to be accredited to vote, we will make sure that that person, the last person on the line at 2:30, has voted before we close. So if by, say, 2:30, there's no other person on the line, then the polling will close in that polling unit. But if there are people still lined up, we'll take note of the last person on the line at 2:30 and make sure that nobody else joins the line. But those who are already on the line would be accredited and they'll vote. And when they finish voting, the ballot boxes will be brought, open, the ballot papers brought out, sorted out party by party, and then you count how many votes each party has. You record the votes in the ballot, in the result sheet. The polling unit result sheet is what we call Form EC8A. You record it physically there on the result sheet.
Everybody will watch.
Everybody will watch. The party agents, anybody who is interested will stand there and watch.
So what about the talks about electorate needs to stay about 300 meters away from the polling unit and all of that?
Yes. So because we need space to conduct the election peacefully. So it's only the agents of the parties that would be close by. there's also a perimeter line for them to stay, so that they allow the electoral officials to conduct their affairs. But it is such that they can see what is happening.
Okay.
So the votes are recorded in the result sheet. The result sheet comes in multiple of copies. A copy would be given to each of the party agents. Each party has one agent. So there will be a copy for each political party. There's one that will be kept by the security agencies. But the first 2 pages are kept by INEC. Now, when they count the results and enter it, they will have to cross-check that the total figures are not more than what is recorded in the BVAS as the number of persons who've been accredited. In the event it is more than that, then it means that there was overvoting there, and the right thing to do is to cancel the result of that polling unit.
Okay.
So everybody needs to be careful that that doesn't occur. And how do you prevent that from occurring? It means that nobody should be given a ballot paper until the person has been accredited. So we could have a situation where there are a lot of people and people say, don't waste our time. Let some people start voting. No, you should not be given a ballot paper if you've not been accredited. And when you've also been accredited, you shouldn't be given more than 1 ballot paper for each election. Because if you are given more than 1, then there will be overvoting. So we have to be careful about that. And nobody should be given a ballot if the person has not been accredited. So when that happens, the other thing that could happen is that at the point of sorting and counting and recording, there could be error in counting.
Okay.
So if, for instance, you finish counting and you realize that it's more than the accredited voters, it may be safe for you to count again and be sure that it wasn't an error of counting.
Okay.
And then you record the score.
So for the INEC staff who are going to be on the field, particularly the ad hoc staff and all of that,
Yes.
what's the level of preparations for them to ensure that there's zero tolerance in terms of some of these things that you highlighted?
Yes.
And secondly, there have been concerns about the functionality of BVAS, particularly in rural areas where you don't have network and stuff like that. Yeah.
Okay, so for the ad hoc staff that have been involved in the election, there's training for them. Over the weekend, we started the training for the supervisory presiding officers. We spent Saturday and Sunday training them. Tomorrow, we are going to, for 3 days, tomorrow, 14, 15, and 16, we are going to train the presiding officers and the assistant presiding officers. These are the real guys that conduct the election in the field there. We are going to train them for 3 days. And when they are selected, the night before the election, remember, we go to camps. So they also have refresher training there on what to do. And many of them have done this previously. Some of the youth corps members may have done it as students.
Okay.
And we also take some former youth corps members who've done it before. So some of them have done it before. And with this length of training, it's something that anybody with basic knowledge should be able to do. Now, you've talked about in rural areas. I need to stress that the BVAS doesn't need a network to operate. The BVAS would be charged. It's just like your phone, that you have contacts in them. So whether you have network or not, you can always pull up the contact.
Okay.
So each BVAS would be configured for a polling unit with the registered voters for that polling unit. Enter their data is in there. That's why when you go to your own polling unit, your information can come up and you can get accredited.
Okay, I'm going to ask you this.
Yes.
Nigerians are watching.
Yes.
And they want to know, do you think this Naira shortage has anything to do with the election? Do you think is a ploy to stop some politicians from engaging in cash inducement? That's one question.
Okay.
Second question, what modalities are in place? Because Nigerians want to know what modalities are in place to curb cash inducement. These are the 2 questions.
Okay, so this is a national malay. It's not a problem of INEC alone. Now, what has happened about, let's even talk about the whole concept of vote buying of vote trading. The truth is that the reason we have a high level of attempts to induce voters is because every vote now counts. And that means that's credit to the electoral system.
Okay.
That's credit to how INEC has improved on its operation such that people now know that you can only win on the basis of valid votes cast for you. We've passed those days that politicians didn't bother whether election was going on or not. They just waited for the collation points, just pad figures, and then you win. Those days are far gone. So now, because every vote counts, those who need the votes, that is the politicians and the political parties, find ways of getting people to vote for them, and that is what has led to vote buying. Initially, it was just the case of vote buying, but over time, maybe also added with the level of poverty in the land and disenchantment with the system, we now have vote selling. Okay. So we don't only have people who want to buy the votes, we have people who are willing to sell the votes. So sometimes we go for election and everything is set for election to start, the voters are there and they're reluctant to come and start voting until they see representatives of political parties come around and are willing to trade with them on their votes before they come out. So it now becomes a national problem that has to be dealt with by Nigeria and Nigerians.
But is it not a political, an electoral offense?
Yes, it is an electoral offense to do that. But you know that on a typical election day, if you go to a polling unit, the interest of INEC would be that election is conducted peacefully, that anybody who wants to vote comes, is accredited, and the person votes, and the vote is counted, and result is announced on the basis of those votes. Even if somebody has been induced, or even if somebody votes for any reason, you could have your reason for voting for any candidate or party. It could be because you've been induced, or you are going to be induced, you are going to be compensated afterwards, monetarily or through other means. It could be that you like the person because the person is handsome, or the person is tall, or the person comes from your community, or you went to the same school with the person, or the person's children are friends with your children. Whatever sentiments you bring in, the choice is yours. And no vote is less valid than the other on the basis of why the person voted in a particular way. Every vote validly cast has the same weight as any other vote. So if people have come to vote and they were not forced, their hands were not forced to thumbprint a particular party, then it's a valid vote, and INEC will count that vote. Now, the issue of vote buying or vote selling, the security agents, that's their duty to intercept anybody who involves in that. But in doing that, they also have to be conscious that the overall interest of election is for people to come and cast the vote, and it is counted. So we would rather the votes are brought in and it's counted than focus on trying to effect arrest. Okay. Because in trying to effect the arrest, you also have to realize that it could lead to a breakdown of law and order in that place such that the election is disrupted. So what would you have gained? That the election in a polling unit of, say, 500 registered voters is disrupted because one or two persons tried to buy or sell votes. Okay? Yeah. After all, at the end of the day, it is the person's choice how he or she has decided to vote. So let the person vote. You can intercept the person in such a way that it does not disrupt the process, and then get the person prosecuted.
Okay.
We don't have a problem.
The question
with that.
I asked,
yes,
that perception, the naira shortage,
yes,
do you think it has anything to do with the election in terms of curbing?
I would rather allow the people who are in charge of monetary regulations to tell us what this is all about. I know that officially the central bank did not link their decision to election. But I've also seen an interview where the president, in responding to the question, linked it to an election, to the election, that they want people to go out there and vote without being induced, or that politicians should go and campaign without using money to induce people. So that's a political aspect. Our concern is with the conduct of the election. Whether there's so much money in the system or not, it would not stop people from coming to vote. And if people don't come to vote because they've not been given money, then it also shows the quality of citizens we have, the quality of voters we have. So if we have 100 registered voters in a polling unit and only 20 turn up to vote, results will be given based on the number who have come up to vote, not on the percentage of people who have turned up to vote. So yes, I know that the cash crunch is affecting quite a lot of things. People are disenchanted, and it could even affect, legitimate plannings and deployment for the election. So we are doing the best we can to work around that. We've had discussions with the banking authorities, with the central bank. I'm sure you are aware that the chairman of INEC has had meetings with the central bank.
I'm aware of that.
Yeah, so that is happening, and we've been assured that this would not affect our funding for the election, and we are working with that assurance.
All right, let's take you back a little bit to where we started our conversation from, talking about the number of registered voters in Edo State.
Yes.
Some of the statistics that are available, particularly on the national scale, about 70 million registered in 2019, but 35 people actually voted, which means we had close to 65% that didn't come out to vote. What is the number for Edo State in terms of registered voters?
So for Edo State, the number of registered voters is about 2.5 million registered voters. And of that number, maybe about 400,000 cards. I told you the backlog of cards have not been collected. But some of those figures may be, some of the cards, the backlog of cards that have not been collected may have been people who have also done transfer. Or updated, they've done transfer, or maybe they thought they lost their cards and asked for new cards, which have been addressed in this last registration process. So after this, I think at some point, the commission will need to take a serious look at those cards from way back 2010, 2011, that some of those cards may no longer be necessary at all, because some of the persons would be dead. Some of the persons may have done transfer, so they are counted in the new number of people who transferred, and some of the people may no longer be in the country. So the chances of picking those cards are quite low. Even though now there's some scenario that played out also. There were many people whose cards, who had registered before, maybe never collected the cards. And believed that, or even forgotten that they are registered before. So during this last registration exercise, some of them came and registered again. So when we now identify that this was multiple registration, we canceled the latest registration. So some of those people who came to collect their cards and were told they did not have cards is because they did multiple registration. But sometimes if they open up when we ask them questions, because sometimes when I go to these collection centers, I see people who are disenchanted. What is the problem? They say they didn't give them their cards. And I'll start asking them, okay, what happened? When did you register? They tell me, and I ask them, are you sure you didn't register before now? Most of them will claim they never registered before now. But when I ask questions, or they will say they can't remember. And I'll try to remind them, okay, did you register in 2010, 2011? They can't remember. Then I'll ask them questions like, do you remember who was president that time, which election it was? Did you register when we voted for Goodluck? They say, yes, I voted in that, or I registered in that election, or I voted or something. We say, okay, that means you were registered before. So your old registration is still there. For some who said they never had the opportunity of picking the cards, it's okay. Let's check from those old cards. And in some instances, we found their cards amongst the old cards of 2011, 2015, or 2019. And they didn't know, they attempted to register afresh. So there are some like that. So I keep saying of the 2.5 million, about 400,000
cards
of
yet
those
to be collected. Now, I wanted to just take you up on this issue that you raised. if we have a situation where someone maybe had registered before,
Yes.
and then re-registered again,
Yes.
rather than maybe cancelling this new registration, why don't we cancel the former registration?
No.
Activate this registration so the person can get the card. Now, those whose registrations were cancelled, apparently they are going to be disenfranchised.
Yes, because at the point of registration, they were told that you've registered before, you don't need to register again.
Okay.
In fact, it was even easier for those people who wanted to do transfer or update, because you could even have done it at home with your smartphone. So when they come there and we tell them, if you've registered before, let us know. A lot of people deliberately lie. There were people who intentionally wanted to register more than once because they did not believe us when we said that the technology we have will be able to fish them out. Because in the past we've said that, and some people were able to slip through the cracks, and then so they thought it was going to be business as usual. So once you're in the system, any other thing you need to do is to update. You can change your information. Maybe your name has changed, especially for married women. Your name has changed, or your address has changed. You want to vote in a new place. And there are also some people that there may have been some mistakes, like maybe date of birth, or the person is a male and was described as female, or vice versa. Those could have been corrected. So we said when we see the later in time registration, we knock it out because the old one is there. The assumption is that the old one is there and that the person has a card for that.
Fantastic. If you just join us, it's still Nigeria Decides live studio of independent television. Beautiful Monday morning, and we've been talking with the INEC Resident Electoral Commissioner, Edo State, Mr. Obo Fanga, sharing some thought with us on what has been done so far to ensure that the election within the context of Edo State is smooth, is free, fair, and credible, particularly with the bimodal voter accreditation system, BVAS. That seems to be a major talking point in the build up to the election. So we are very excited about the efforts being made so far. We know that ultimately it will be a better election compared to previous elections against the background of some of the things that have been put in place. We're just on the verge of concluding this interview to look at where we are in Edo State in terms of the level of registration and preparations for the elections proper. So give us an overview on your expectations on the conduct of the election. You know, in spite of the challenges, I mean, I know that within Edo State, there are areas that are very difficult terrains. What's the structures and plans for such areas? I mean, if you're driving from here to Ekuma, for example, it's such a very, very onerous task. And then you have places as far as Lucia and all of those areas, those riverine communities and whatever.
Okay, so it's not the first time we are going to conduct election in Edo State. So we are aware of those terrains, and there are measures to ensure that we access that everywhere on time. We usually we have what we call the registration area centers, or racks. We also have super racks. This is where people camp overnight before deploying for the election. So for every local government area, there are wards. And in every ward, you have the polling units. Depending on the number of polling units there, you can have a ward, will have its center, where all the election officials and materials to be used in election on a Saturday would have been moved in latest by Friday evening. And they stay there with security overnight, make all the preparations, share all the materials to the various presiding officers for each of the polling units. They have refresher training on the conduct of the election. And early in the morning of the election day, we have vehicles that now move them to the respective polling units, ready to open the polls before election starts at 8:30. So we have this worked out. We also know the areas that would need, apart from the nature of vehicle that would be used, whether it is a vehicle on land or whether it is boats that would be used to reach those areas. So we have this worked out in our operational plans.
Okay, as a follow-up to that, is INEC anticipating any hiccups? For instance, petrol scarcity is a serious problem.
Yes.
Before now, we didn't have that problem.
Yes.
Now, about 12 days to election. So are you anticipating any hiccup, any contingency arrangement?
Yes, if it persists this way, then there would be a problem. We've been assured that this will be sorted out. But apart from that, we are also working in discussion with the petroleum marketers. Specifically, we are talking with the NNPC. Okay. You remember our chairman has had a meeting with the NNPC, and at the local level here, we are also in talks with the NNPC in the state here. They've also assured us that they will be able to take care of logistics demands for petrol for our vehicular movement. So
but has that been finalized?
Yeah, well, I would say it's almost finalized. We won't have problems with that. Yeah, we won't have problems with that.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Obong Efanga. It's always a delight to have you here. I mean, with such a very short notice, you're able to make it to the studio this morning. We're very grateful for that.
Thank you. It's it comes with a terrain.
And I believe that the viewer must have been enlightened.
Yes, absolutely.
From your comments.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, that's been an interview with the INEC Resident Electoral Commissioner, Edo State, Mr. Obong Efanga, giving us details on how the bimodal voter accreditation system works. That's the new innovation INEC has guaranteed us will take away all the shenanigans in our political system. For those who've been alleged to be buying PVCs and all of that, you're wasting your time. For those who have been trying to do one form of manipulation or any other thing that will undermine the process for their own selfish interest, they're wasting their time. This is a new innovation that has come to stay, to refine our electoral process, to define our election, to actually give us the best of the best in terms of all the candidates vying for different positions as far as the 2023 election is concerned. And we must say kudos to INEC for this great innovation. We'll take a short break. We'll be back with you on Nigerian Decides Live Studios in a moment. Don't go away.